Hi, this is Carrie Rogers Whitehead. Glad to have you today. We'll get you in the room here and we'll get going in just a few minutes, but I thought I'd bring everyone in. I didn't know if we have someone here from Creekview that wants to kind of introduce. Like I sent out a moderator link, but I haven't seen a moderator quite yet. But love to come on, have you here so you can go and introduce yourself and say hello. And if there's someone here from the school that wants to start us off today, I can make you a presenter. I was not sure if someone was joining us for that, but go ahead and introduce yourself right in the chat box and we'll get going in just a few minutes. To getting to know you. I'm Carrie Rogers Whitehead. I'm here to talk about digital parenting and answer your questions and kind of talk about strategies and things that we can do as parents. I'm a parent myself. My son just turned 10 years old, so hit the double digits. We're in the tween years there, so kind of around that age, and that tween years is pretty fascinating stuff because you got a lot of different stuff going on at once. So go ahead and introduce yourself and I'll just kind of dive in. I wanted to let you know, and I'll follow up with Creekview as well. I've written a few parenting books. This one just came out with Skyhorse in August, and I'll give a copy away once I get an address of someone who attended our Creekview contact, and it kind of summarizes a lot of the research, a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today, called the 3 M's of fearless digital parenting. And so we talk about the 3 M's, and I'll dive in more into the 3 M's. So I'll get the list. I'll reach out to Creekview and someone who stays the whole time, and we'll mail you a copy there. But I wish I could see you in person, but it's good to be here. Let's dive on in here and then get to know you. Introduce yourself. How many kids you have? Maybe you're at the school. Are you an educator? What are your thoughts? And I'll introduce us at Digital Respons-Ability. We are the state-sponsored provider of online safety. So that means teaching kids and teaching parents. And we have been out teaching some of the kids out your kids out your way. So we do K through 12 and talk to parents a lot because we got to be together on this. We can't just talk about this issue without parents too. It takes, if you learn something at school that's not reinforced at home, it just kind of dies. I mean, I'm dealing with this right now. So my kids in spelling is his toughest subject, and he learns spelling at school. But if he did no spelling practice at home, and I never ever went over his spelling words, he's going to struggle with those words because he only has them for a little bit of time at school. Same thing with a lot of these topics. If they're only getting a little bit of it here, and there's not being reinforced at home, it doesn't really help that learning. So thanks, Natasha. I will follow up with you, and we'll get a copy to someone there. So welcome. I'm Carrie. Come on in here. We're introducing ourselves. I have a little poll. It's still up. I realize I should have put 13 to 18 on that one. If you want to tell me a little bit about who is in your family, but we provide all that's training for students and parents for free, and we're glad to be here to be a resource. We also have a lot of resources through our website. I'll put this up right here. This is our digital parenting site. We also have resources on our other site as well, but that one's specifically for parents. And as well on that site, I run a gaming review site with videos and text links of different games from a parent perspective. If you have gamers in your family there, I know we do a lot in our home. But tell me a little bit more about yourself, and tell me a little bit more about what you're seeing. So I'd like to start off to kind of see what are the things that's happening in your home? Maybe something that you're concerned about, maybe something you're excited about, something you have a question about. It looks like from our poll that we have mostly, I'll close it up. I'll close it up here. Mostly we got some tween ages here, but what's going on in your house if you want to share, or things that you're seeing or just have questions about. I know lately I've been getting questions about TikTok because that's been a fun back to school year with everything going on and the trends there. So I don't know, maybe that's what you're seeing. Maybe you got a lot of games in your house or something else going on. I'd like to hear what do you see? And hopefully, I've heard from a few fellow educators, they're a little sick of TikTok. Hopefully it's been okay back to school year for you. So I know also things that I see. We do monthly webinars. A big thing I see is around media literacy and misinformation. So if that's a topic that you're particularly interested in, I'll just put it in the chat box right here. I'm doing a webinar in just a few weeks on the 28th. That's October 28th at noon. It's completely free on why do we believe misinformation. So we're going to be diving in everything to bias, conspiracy theories, all of it. So if that's something that you see, that's something I see, and we'll be talking about it later with Digital Respons-Ability. We have free monthly webinars. So Mandy, you have a full spread there. So you've got the tweens and you've got the younger ones there. Anyone else want to share their ages or things they're seeing in their on their news feed, on the news, with their kids and their family? Because I like to tailor this towards you and what is most beneficial to what you have going on in your home. I'll let you type and add things there as I kind of start moving on a little bit, because I want to make sure we cover this in this hour and I give you some time for discussion. I like to especially have time for discussion at the end. So a little bit of what we're going to cover is the different age groups and different strategies. And then at the end, I will share a few red flag apps and red flag behaviors. So, things that you want to look out for. And we'll share some resources, and we have a lot of resources on our site or with our other free monthly webinars. So you can feel free to join us there. So when I said we are the state provider of online safety, but we like to use this word digital citizenship. It's a mouthful, I know, because we have to look at safety from a holistic perspective. If like a car, you're going to have brakes, you're going to have sensors, you're going to have seat belts, you're going to have the headlights, you're going to have a whole bunch in that car that keeps you safe. And same thing with this idea of online safety. There's a whole bunch of elements. These are these elements of digital citizenship that help us keep safe. So if we don't have a seatbelt, even though the brakes work, then we're still not going to be completely as safe as we could. Same thing if we don't have the digital literacy skills to understand settings and how to change maybe our feeds or whatever we're exposed to on social media, then that's kind of like we're losing a little bit of the seatbelt there. If we struggle with communication, well, that's another risk factor for being unsafe. We might not understand what people are saying to us, fall into things. So a whole bunch of elements of safety there. So that could be everything from financial scams to media literacy, like I said, communication, understanding how the computer is used. So we really try to treat it as a holistic perspective, but of course, parents are the most important ingredients there, parents and caregivers, because this has to be reinforced at home. They're with you more. They're on a lot of devices and everything at home, and they're watching you. So that kind of leads me to the first, what we call the 3 M's of digital parenting. Is I like to break it up by like where kids are developmentally. So that's what I call it, the 3 M's. Fun fact, the 3M company filed a trademark thing, but we still won the trademark. Don't not to be confused with the 3M company. That was annoying. But we broke it just there to help people remember. So model, manage, and monitor. So they're watching you, and we're going to talk about that at the younger age. And then as the kids grow, how you manage some of their online behavior and monitor their behavior too. Just kind of a handy acronym to think about these things. Because as technology changes, kids change, and they need to change together, and our parenting needs to adjust to that. So before I get going, I like to just kind of do a little bit of a framework of how we talk about this, as we always like to look at the why. What is the symptom of why are they online so much? I heard this phrase from a professor: we do not say those who are depressed have bed addictions. So when we talk about technology, we like to see what else is happening in the home. So I've done a lot of digital parenting consultation with families, and I'll ask them a whole bunch of questions, not just about the technology use, but what else is happening in the home or at school or whatever is going on. So it's often a symptom how we use technology of something else going on in our lives. So I'll tell you a personal story on my end, and if anyone wants to share their thoughts. So I saw this in my home. So we love gaming in my family. I run a game review site on digitalparenting.com, like I was saying. But there is, you can play too much games and you can get sucked into that. I'm the first person to say that. And we were seeing this with my son. He just wanted to, he was doing it more than normal. That was a red flag to me that he was on a Switch playing Breath of the Wild, Legend of Zelda, favorite game, had that game forever, played it, and he liked it, but he never played so much. And not only was he playing a lot, he was just really, really intense, and he'll usually just talk and interact with us, but he was really focused on his Switch. But at the same time that when this started happening was right when after I got a divorce and his dad moved out. So both things happened at the same time. Red flag behavior for something else going on. We had him see a school counselor. We talked about it. And for him, he was using that Switch, that device, because it was comfortable and it was safe. He loved that game. It was just there for him always. And it provided the stability and comfort in a time that was not very stable. So I have to look at this in my own family. Like, what are these red flag behaviors? Why are they using the device? What is else happening around them? And so we did have some conversations about that. And we tried to say, okay, what are some other things that maybe can make us feel comfortable or stable? And, sometimes life is not always routine and there's changes. So what are some other things that can make him feel comfortable through this transition? Not just the game. The game's okay, but that was getting to an excess because something else was going on. So what is the why? And that's just, we're going to go into those red flag behaviors, but excessive use is definitely one of them. So that's a little bit of a framework to think about a lot of these things, because if I just blamed Breath of the Wild, if I'm like, oh, he's just on Breath of the Wild, it's sucking him in, it's like an addictive game, and I need to take that game away. Well, that didn't really adjust what was going on. What was going on was all of this change in structure and routine happening to him. And so that was like a stable, normal thing. So if I just got rid of it, might have made the problem worse, because I wouldn't have substituted it with something else and not attacked what was really going on there. So what is the why? Feel free if you have any experiences or things that you want to share. That's something personal that we went through, and I had to take my own advice. Oh, let's dive into these ages here. So we talked about what is the why, what's behind the screen, and these are the younger kids. What do we do with our little ones, our 0? This is about 0 through 8. So kind of broken it up developmentally with where their brains are at, where their bodies are at, what's going on. And at this age, and so when we work with those kindergartners, those younger elementary kids, these are things that we focus on in our classes that try to focus on as well at home, because they are watching you all the time. They mimic you. They want to, kids especially at this age, like want that attention, that they'll do what you have, and they'll mimic and they'll follow what you're doing. So you need to model that behavior. What do you want to see from them? What is your device use looking like? Are you practicing a healthy digital lifestyle? What are the habits? What are the routines? What are the norms in your household? Other things at this age are concepts like emotional regulation. So they're little balls of id. There's a lot of emotions going on. They're learning what their emotions are and how to express them. And if anyone's had a toddler, you can see that maybe those expressions of their emotions don't come out in the best way. But so this is something that they're learning. And part of that process of learning is like identifying the emotions, expressing the emotions. But so often what we do with technology is that they don't get a chance to kind of express and feel those things, because we hand them a device. We're in the grocery store and they have a fit, and here's the device. Or you're bored, here's the device. Oh, I'm late, here's the device. And we just push it kind of on them. And so it's kind of like they're not quite learning some of those emotional regulation skills. And look, I'm the first to say that, like, we need breaks sometimes. Long car rides, yeah, go for it. But if it's a consistent thing that every time they're experiencing boredom, or they're being upset, or some kind of emotion, that they get a device, and they're starting to associate this with emotional regulation, not with the work you do in your head. And this, we see this online. We see people coping in maybe unhealthy ways through social media, gaming, whatever it is, because they struggle with emotional regulation without a crutch. So model is what those younger kids are looking at. And so is there a way that you've modeled examples that you model good tech behavior, or something that you do in your home, if you want to share a routine that you have, a practice that you have in your home? Maybe it's like how you use your phone during meal times. How do you talk about devices and computers? How do you what does that look like in your home, if you have any examples of maybe modeling that behavior, if you want to share? So they're watching you. They want to see what you're doing, and they're making assumptions, and they're learning norms and values from that modeling that you have. And part of that is a way to push against that is this concept of narrative parenting. A young child, probably the first exposure to a toddler, when they get a device, it's usually a video or a game. That's like the first exposure they've had to a phone or a tablet. I mean, we're not handing a toddler spreadsheets. we're not handling children like work. We do a lot of work on our phones, but their first exposure to it is maybe games or entertainment, because we often use this to entertain them, or in the line, or whatever it is. And so a kid who doesn't know any better is just going to assume that every time you're looking at your phone, you're playing a game. And I've seen it in out and about. The kids are constantly reaching for the phone. Well, part of the reason is they think their parents are playing games all the time. And why are you playing a game? Why can't I play a game? Or why can't I watch a video, or whatever that is? Because they started associating device for those reasons. Now, devices and technology do all sorts of amazing things, and this is a time that you can start teaching about that. So narrative parenting is like, what am I doing on this device? And for some of you who maybe have to work from home, or you have a social life, you have other things you have to do on a phone, narrating what you're doing. So I'm going here, I'm working here, because this teaches the child that devices have multiple uses. They're not just for fun, they're for work, they're part of kind of our family's life, they're part of school, they're part of our lives. But also that you're not ignoring them, that you're not just sitting here playing a game and ignoring your child, because they might jump to that assumption. So we encourage that narrative parenting piece. For the younger kids, we talk about this in our classes. Now, they're typically not looking for inappropriate content. If they know the words for those things and are actively looking for them, that's a big red flag of where did they pick that up and where did they learn that. So typically they're still learning words and spelling, and they might not know how to type or any of that kind of stuff. So they're generally not searching for some of that content. They stumble upon it accidentally. So at these ages, like 8 and below, this is where you use maybe some filters or some other types of software to kind of rein in some of that content, but also be aware of if they're with a friend, if they're on your phone, you just give it to them for a minute to entertain them. They might stumble upon something and they don't have the context to understand the content. So they, at this age, still are dealing with a lot of magical thinking. What's real? What's fake? I know when my kid was little, like a monster on the screen was very, very scary, because in his brain, monsters can be real. They don't understand the real and fake a bit. They don't understand what this means. So they don't have the context, and that can be very scary sometimes. So having those filters, being very careful about what devices they're using. And then when we work with kids this age, we talk a lot about asking permission to use the device. Can I? Mother, may I? Is a game that we've played too. So they're not just stumbling upon it as well. We talk about kind of like a mindfulness technique. The last technique: leave the screen, ask an adult, say something, and think about it. Now, thinking about it is not to like shame that you did something wrong, but to say, how did this pop up? Because kids at this age, it typically might accidentally pop up. They're on YouTube, they're on a fun Minecraft video, it just pops up on the side and they click on it and it might be inappropriate. So how did that happen so we can prevent it from happening again? No, thanks, Mandy. So Mandy mentions talking about needing to set technology down. If we have a fit, we know we're spending too much time if we can't walk away. That's a good way to, like, that's a red flag, right? If I'm having temper tantrums and I can't self-regulate or emotionally regulate without it, that's saying something. So we have to, and I'm glad you said that about adults. Adults, we often do the same thing. We're bored, we're irritable, we're frustrated, we pick it up and we do our own bit of self-regulating. But maybe a better option is to call a friend, take a walk, read a book. There's other options of how we can do that. So thanks for that comment. And these are some things that you can start talking to your kid about this age. When I feel upset, here are some things I can do. And this shouldn't be the first choice. Shouldn't necessarily be the first choice for adults either. So I appreciate that. So for the young kids, if you've got little ones, this is from the American Academy of Pediatrics. Is they talk about no screen time under 18 months and limiting just to video chats and interactive touchscreens. So I just want to pause a little bit for the younger ones. Part of the reason for these rules around toddlers and younger ones is that there's this concept called the transfer deficit. If they watch a video of like someone assembling, they've done a lot of research with toddlers assembling a puzzle on a device, they can't replicate it in real life. They struggle to like take that information and apply it to real life. There's the transfer deficit, as they say. This can be TV, this can be the internet, whatever it is. So you have to be really careful about toddlers and those younger ages, like some of this baby Einstein. No, it's actually not good for kids because they learn by looking at faces. They learn through, hearing the sounds. It's just they can't transfer that knowledge until they're around toddler age from a digital environment to an in real environment. So there are some very well-meaning parents that maybe think that, oh, well, they'll just like learn Spanish if they watch someone talking Spanish on the TV. Not really until about age 3, where they're going to get a little bit more of that. So just how their brains work. We're very tactile. They're very tactile, touchy figures at that age. Now preschool, then they can start learning some things from those devices. Now, and this piece of apps need to be interactive. So that means more than just swiping. That means like coloring, clicking around, all what it is. And then the guidelines from the APA for 6+ is just our big ones are limiting screen time, particularly on mobile devices. And one reason that the APA says this is that mobile devices are very isolating. If I'm on my phone, I'm probably not talking to anyone else around me. Now, if I'm watching a TV show with the family, I'm having more of that social interaction. And that's so important for these age, for their developing brains, for their language development, their literacy development, all of it. They need that quality social interaction. And so they recommend very much limiting that screen time on those just individual tablets and mobile devices. Anyone got little ones there? I'm curious if you have any apps that you like in particular. If you feel free to share any recommendations as I'm going through here, because we're getting older. We're now in the tween age. We got a lot of tweens around here. I have one as well, and we are shifting a little bit from some of that modeling behavior. Now you're still, of course, modeling behavior, but you got to kind of create that foundation. And now we're moving on to this tween age. This is around like 8 to 12 or so. And there is a lot going on at these ages. Some of the stats I read, and the stats vary depending on who is reporting it, is that, you have as little as like maybe 15% of 8-year-olds having a smartphone device, but it like goes up to like 80% by 13. So just really in a few years, this is where they get their first smartphone. And it's a huge growth. You don't have as many in like a third, fourth grade classroom, but by the time you're 6th and 7th, big difference. So a lot of this is going on when puberty hits, when they are highly influenced by their peers. So if you have a tween, you might be getting well, they have one, why can't I have one? Why can't this? All of these questions, because this is a high level of peer influence, which is developmentally inappropriate. Like, this is normal. The body's preparing them to kind of branch off on their own. They're getting more independent, but they're branching away from the family, and they're spending more time with their friends. So, you have to be kind of careful with this, because knowing that peer influence is so important at this age. You have to be careful about how you talk with about their friends, and being aware of how they want to be viewed. They are highly attuned to what's going on around them, to whatever those trends are. So they maybe fall into one of those TikTok trends because they want to fit in so much, and they're watching everyone around them. If anyone been in a 7th grade classroom, they often dress the same, talk the same. There's like a few, there's a few ringleaders, and the rest just fall in line. Now, by the time they're a little older in high school, they've kind of been a little more independent. They're not quite that way, but this is a high level of being influenced by peers. So I say, be careful how you talk about their friends. Don't criticize their friends, because their friends are so important. And sometimes we as adults, we don't care as much about what people think. We're through this phase. We just want to say, well, walk it off. Just, why are you so worried? What's the big deal? I mean, because to our adult brain, we're like, what is the big deal? I don't care what they think about me. But understanding where their brains are, it's very normal for them to care very much about what other people think about them. So that's not very helpful advice, even though it might be kind of true. It's not very helpful at this age. So take the blame, be very careful about how you talk with their friends, try to get to know their friends, ask open-ended questions about what they like, and be that scapegoat. If you decide as a family you're not going to give them a phone, well, it's asking a lot for that child to stand up to their friends and say, no, I can't. So you be the scapegoat for whatever it is. No, my mom says I can't do that. My dad says I can't do that. My aunt says I can't do that. My grandma says it. Like, let you can be the mean one, because it's just hard. It's just, they'll get out of it eventually, but it's really hard for them to stand up to that peer influence. And this is another reason that being careful about that first smartphone and when they get it is really important, because if we can get them a little bit more past this high peer influence age, think about what social media is. It's full of peer influences. They're getting it's on hyperdrive. So that's not always, it's so someone who's already paranoid and anxious about fitting in, it can like ramp up a bit of that anxiety that we can delay it a little bit more. When parents ask me this question, I say, just like, we can push it back 13, 14, something like that. At least we can get through some of this puberty hump here. Also, being careful about how you talk and what's the language that we use when we talk about this. So I did a focus group last year with a bunch of teenagers, and asking them specifically about what do you wish that your parents knew about technology, or what they would do around technology. And almost all the teens were feeling frustrated that the parents would just say that they're addicted. Oh, we're addicted. And they felt like they couldn't talk to their parents because they would use some certain language with them. And we also have to be careful about the language we use. We have to be careful about how we talk about their friends at this age, because that high peer influence. But we have to be careful about using words like addiction and kind of like not really listening and having that back and forth, because there's the science doesn't necessarily support that level of addiction. So this is just a chart of dopamine. That's that pleasure hormone that we get in our body. Video games is much lower than cocaine or meth, and so it doesn't affect the brain the same way as some of those drugs do. Now, yes, you're going to have some higher levels of dopamine when you pick up a phone or you scroll or whatever it is, but they're not the same. And we just have to be careful about that. So when I talk to young people or adults, I like to say habits, routines, norms, whatever that is, because also if you feel like you are addicted, then there's no hope. But if you feel like you just have a bad habit, we can break a bad habit there. So these are some things that you can like look at as we're kind of working on managing their tech use. Who are their friends online is a big one at this age, just because of how important their friends are. Knowing their names, asking about them, being non-judgmental about it. Don't be like, oh, that Xavier, he's all worse. Well, they're not going to talk to you about their friend anymore because they get a little protective about it. If they have social media accounts, what do they have? I recommend, if they are getting into this and their friends are on there, then you set up the accounts with them. Then that's a conversation that you can have about what are these settings, how do we block people, how do we hide, what does this privacy look like if you are, because a lot of kids, we survey kids and around schools too about what devices they're using, and they're lying. They're not waiting until they're 13 to get some of these things. So I'm of the belief that, from working with young people, working with the parents as well, is it's better for them not to lie to you, and that you can do it with them. That's not so then you can have these conversations and they're not hiding it from you. So a big one as well at this age is purchases online. I talked to a number of parents that they're like, wow, we spent a lot of money on these microtransactions, on these skins or these mods or whatever it is. So being careful about, if they do have a smartphone, that it's not connected to a credit card, and purchases and all of that is pretty limited. In our family, I have a Google Family Plan. I have the Apple, and it notifies me every time an app wants to be downloaded and any purchasing has to be approved. You can try to adjust the settings on some of that. And of course, knowing the passwords helps manage that behavior there. So before I get to the next section, I just wanted to see if anyone had any questions about that. Teenage, puberty, there's a whole bunch going on. There's some I only have so much time with you, but those are some kind of overarching strategies and suggestions at this age. Or experiences that you've had. Tweens are a fun group, but yeah, they have some group think. So monitors, they're getting a little older. This is like 13 or so. They're teenagers now. This is kind of where you step back a little bit more. You're monitoring, you're watching for those red flags, those changes of behavior, like the story I shared earlier about the excessive use. What is the why? You're having some more conversations about this concept of digital footprint, of what they're doing online, how that can be tracked, how their name can be out there, because just in a few years, they're going to start applying for college or apply for jobs, and most employers and most college admissions counselors are going to Google their name. I'm not saying that's fair. I tell this to teens, I'm like, this kind of sucks. I know we all make mistakes, but unfortunately, you're in an environment where it's hard to make those mistakes online. So let's be careful about that. There's also these concepts that I like to talk about for teens. When we work with teens, we do some goal setting. We try to do digital SMART goals with them. And we're very we do a lot of open-ended questions with teens to help them decide. So this concept of self-efficacy is like feeling confident that you can make the best decisions, that you can do what you need to do. It's that intrinsic confidence out there. So you want to build the self-efficacy. Because if you're the one always managing the devices and telling them and limiting and all this stuff, well, they're not always they're not developing the capability to do it themselves. They're going to have to get themselves up for a class or for a job. They're going to have to tell themselves, no, stop, I need to do this. That's that self-efficacy. So this is why you step back a little bit, and they might make some mistakes. They might stay up too late some nights. They're still kind of learning about this. Adults, we don't always make the best decisions, but this is the time to back off and monitor a little bit more. There's some other things, but those are some big points. I'll talk about this. But yeah, they're out there in the world more. This is a time where we want to not just say no, but we want to say yes. So creating, this is where they can create content and start creating that digital identity, an e-portfolio or whatever, blog, photos. They can share a lot of what they're doing. And there's some great positive things that can be found in their digital footprint, not just negative as well. So this is time to build that up, because as an employer myself, I always Google people. It's just kind of what you do, and you want to see something. You're going to want to investigate and look into that. So a big thing at this age. So remember we talked about those little cute toddlers that struggle with emotional regulation because of where their brains are, and how technology can kind of inhibit with some of learning that. Well, teenagers in some ways have similar brains than toddlers. There's a lot of hormones going on. There's a lot of growth. It's kind of these spurts, these growth spurts. There's a little bit of plateau during those tween years, and then it just spikes up again as the body prepares for adulthood. And this is why sleep is so important. So if you have a baby or toddler, they need a lot of sleep, and maybe they can get by on a little bit less, but then they start needing more again. Teenagers need like 8.5 to 10 hours of sleep a night, and they already got school so early in the morning. So technology really can impact their sleep. So this is a big deal at this age. Sleep is a risk factor for all sorts of issues. If they are being cyberbullied or cyberbullying others, or falling into maybe misinformation rabbit holes, it might also be happening at 2 a.m. when their brains can't stop themselves very well. We're all kind of cranky for a lack of sleep, and we can't make as much long-term planning. We're not very good at stopping ourselves. We just keep scrolling or doom scrolling or whatever you want to call it. So sleep is so important, and it's a safety issue. If you want to keep kids safe online, having them well rested is a big part of that, because sleep is attached to our moods, our behaviors. A lot of this is attached to sleep, and teenagers need more sleep than adults. They need it more than you, even though they might fight you on it. And they're leaving. They're in a few years, so they're going to need to learn to regulate their own emotions, regulate their own tech habits, regulate their own sleep. And are they ready for that? Maybe. Maybe they need a few more years, but this is the time where you do have to kind of back off, and this is a little hard. I mean, you're backing off as the ages go on, and even more at this age. So it's not the easiest there. So these are some questions that you can ask yourself at this age. And if you do go to our website, we have some downloadables of like conversation starters for these different ages. So these are some things that you can start talking about it at what to talk about technology at younger ages, tweens and adults. But how are you monitoring them? Are you too involved or not enough? Do you not know any of their friends or any of their accounts or anything online? Now, to be clear, it's normal that they're gonna not tell you everything. They're developing their own identities, they're reaching adulthood, and they're gonna be off on their own someday, and you're not gonna know a lot of what's going on. That's kind of hard as a parent, I know. But so it's okay if you don't know everything, but you do want to know something. And are they able to get up in the morning? Are they able to go to bed at night? Are they able to finish their homework and not be distracted by various different things? Can they create their own boundaries? And this also concept of, can they use the internet for good? Or can they make their own positive digital footprint? Can they keep in touch with friends and family in a healthy way? Can they enjoy games with their friends? Can they use the internet for good? Can they help other people connect other people? That's a question we can talk about at those teenagers years. So I am going to start covering a few things: digital contracts, and then we'll get into red flag behaviors and some red flag apps. But I wanted to pause again. If there's something that you had on teens, questions, thoughts, other things that you'd like to bring up, just let me know. And then we'll kind of talk about some of this other stuff. So before they get their phone, right? Hopefully you're having these conversations, and hopefully that you've maybe come to some kind of agreement. So it doesn't necessarily need to be this complicated thing. It can be a sheet of paper that maybe you've written some stuff down on. But finding an agreement when they are getting these internet connected devices, so this could be a tablet, this could be a phone, can help both ways. It can help, like, you share those norms and values and routines and keeping to what your family agrees with the technology, but it also gives them a chance to express their feelings. And it should be back and forth. It should not just be top down. You don't necessarily want to hand your kid a contract and say, sign it. You want to work with them. So here are some questions to kind of craft what that looks like. So so you're having a conversation with your kid is like, when are you going to get to bed? Where are we going to put this? How are you going to charge this? If you lose it, what happens? That happens as well. Are you going to be replacing this? And knowing the passwords to the device, and who purchases it. These are some questions to think about as well. So some of the big ones when I help people or talked about this before is around this concept of responsibility and accountability. If it breaks, if it's lost, if it's the battery dies, whatever, who's accountable for it? Is it the parent? Is it the child? Is it how are they going to earn it? Are they going to earn it back? Whatever that looks like, and this concept of tech-free times. So helping them create their own boundaries. So when do you feel it's good to have and not good to have? When would what do you feel? Now they might just be like, no, I want it all the time. Well, that's not necessarily the answer, but you can work with them on creating that digital contract. And if conflict happens, as it sometimes does, this can make that easier because you can just reference the contract. You can set a time on it, says we're going to revisit this in 6 months, we're going to revisit this in a year, or at the end of the semester, we're going to revisit this, and you can update it as well because the rules are going to change. The things are going to change as they age. So let's talk a little bit about, as I said, red flag behaviors. I'm going to talk about some red flag apps, and then I'd love to hear from you if you have questions about anything at all there. So I shared the story earlier of my son who was excessively on one particular game on his Nintendo Switch because it was a stable situation. But it was a red flag behavior that I noticed, and my little antenna went up and like, what's going on? Let's talk about this. Let's deal with this. Before that, yeah, thank you, Nicole, for your comments. Is monitoring what they say through school accounts and emails a big thing for my family. I do weekly checks on my oldest daughter's emails because of inappropriate conversations I found. Just because it's a school account doesn't mean you can't access it and monitor it because it's happening around the kids. I mean, and I've heard some stats that cyberbullying, the most common place is Google Docs, is some of those places because they're just online a lot, and they're on these collaborative spaces, and they figured out they can just chat on Google Docs instead. They're not necessarily they're chatting on other places, but that's a way that they do with school. And so, whatever district you should be able to have, there's an electronic device policy that's often posted on the district's website, and they should be able to help what software, what apps, and what things that they're using. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. And if they have a Google account through school, I mean, right, then they might be using that for YouTube and all sorts of things, and that's you can see some of the history and some of the other stuff on there as well. So red flag behaviors. So here's a few of them. Someone mentioned a bit of a tantrums, not being able to walk away is if they can't. That's an issue of like that self and emotional regulation that maybe in this situation the internet has become some kind of crutch that's not helpful at this point. Now to be clear, if it's an 18-month-old, they have tantrums all over the place, but especially as they get older, if they're having tantrums about technology, or if the tantrums are very, very excessive or long, or they're associated with certain things, then that's an issue too. Credit cards are issues, tiredness and moodiness. That's a red flag behavior for lots of stuff, but they also could be a teenager who has to get up really early for school. So when I say red flag, it's good to monitor it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that something is going on, but it should just put your little antenna up a little bit about what's happening here. Being very secretive, of course, and not wanting to hide the phone. Maybe if you had the password doesn't work. Maybe there's a whole bunch of two-factor authentication going on. I find that on some of the iPhone, the Apple devices, they're harder to hide some of those apps, but there are easier ways to do that on Android. So being secretive, having weird apps that you haven't seen, all of that kind of stuff are some red flag behaviors. Just to monitor, to watch, and to have the conversation about. Oh. So these are some red flag apps that I'll go through, and this is always changing, and I'm going to have to keep updating it because it constantly changes. I think I need to adjust this a little bit because the pandemic did change a lot. One thing in particular that the pandemic changed was this app called Omegle. Omegle's from like 2009 or something. It's an old app. And it's an anonymous video chat app. And then the pandemic hit, and all these kids started joining this random video chat app that's been around forever. So that's those kind of apps, those random ones. The chat, you might have heard of chat roulette. Roulette is particularly infamous. So they just get randomly paired with somebody, and maybe it's a video or a text or whatever it is. And so that's really exciting for a teen. So the teens' brains, they get higher highs with novelty. Like they love excitement, risk, danger. To us, we're like, why would I want to talk to some rando stranger? Like this doesn't appeal to maybe an adult brain, but for a teen brain, it can be really exciting. So on my lists of red flag apps are a lot of those random anonymous video chat apps. And Omegle is one that just got really, really big during the pandemic. And I thought it was going to die, but it went big there as well. And yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned the moods can be affected by the app. So if they're on the phone and maybe their mood changes as well, if they're, you see them on here and they kind of shift a little bit, something kind of went on, especially if they don't necessarily want to talk about it with you, it is that red flag as well. And so yeah, there are those hidden apps. They're easier to do on Android devices to have those hidden apps or the hidden like photo vaults and stuff than iPhone, because there's just different rules around app development between the different stores. So random anonymous video chats. Whisper is another one that had a bit of a surge during the pandemic, like a lot of different apps. It's kind of like very meme based, and they post different memes. It's very, very anonymous. You don't really need anything to join the account. And I put that on the list because it has a hookup function where you can search and you can have direct messages and you can search by certain places, but it's also an app where a lot of young people will just kind of almost like put a cry for help. And, I get that sometimes we have a hard day. Maybe they don't want to talk to their parents or teacher, whoever it is. So they put it out on an app. And I get that emotion. I get that. Some of the issue with that, whether it be Whisper or somewhere else, that's like a flare to predators, because you have a vulnerable young person here, and they're in a vulnerable emotional state, and that's where they can be preyed upon more when we're tired, we're emotional. That's when we kind of fall for things or make those mistakes. So that's a concern. That one reason I write Whisper on there as well. Now, of course, that can be, if you're putting vulnerable, really emotional stuff anywhere, that can make you particularly prey, but it also can get you help too. So, but if they are doing that, one activity that we do with teens is we have them write down, with this activity where they write down their thoughts, and we just put it on a little post-it and they throw it away. And we talk a lot about how sometimes our emotions are really transient, but when we put it in a public forum, we make it permanent. And we don't necessarily want to make it permanent because we might not feel that way the other times. And there's other ways that we can express our emotions that are not online. So a diary, writing it down, walk, whatever. These are those conversations you can start having at a young age. Other things on my red flag app list are Kik's been on there for a while. That's a very, very anonymous text app that every time you close it, the whole entire feed deletes. Kik has groups of about to 50 people that you can search through different hashtags, and it's frequently used in dating or other kind of hookup apps. Lipsy has kind of gone down a little bit. I might take it eventually off my list, but it's also one of those kind of random apps that's connected through GPS. So there was one years ago, some of you might remember, it was on college campuses called Yik Yak, and it would connect. If you had it on your phone, it would tell you who's around you. It was kind of like Tinder, basically, or one of those dating apps. It has a GPS function, but Lipsy's just more anonymous than some of those apps, and so that can be a recipe for whenever things are anonymous, people aren't always the kindest there. Now, just like Omegle, Discord, and that's that icon in that bottom right, sorry, in that bottom right down there, that grew a ton in 2020. Gaming grew a ton in 2020, and Discord is used a lot for gaming. And so it's been actually a great thing in our family. It's kind of connected some people together. When we couldn't go outside with the pandemic, Discord was there for the chats. The thing about Discord, though, is it has been a place where some of that, some of those misinformation, those conspiracy, those hate groups have gone to, just because it is so private. You have private servers that you can't just get in very easily. It's not like they're not like they're gonna pop up on your feed somewhere. You have to be invited or know the password to just kind of get in there. And so most servers are fine. You know, they're gaming servers. There's places that you can just kind of connect with your friends and talk, especially if you're playing a game. Some great stuff, but some of the private servers and some of the very large public forums are problematic. I mean, if you've got tens of thousands of people in any type of public forum, it's just kind of can be a problem because you've got all different ages. So you've got the young kids who love Fortnite, but you've got adults who like Fortnite, and then you put them all in a room together. Not always the best stuff. If your kid's really into Fortnite and wants to talk, like, make a private server with just their friends is a safer option than joining some of those public ones there too. And the last one I'll also mention, Telegram and Signal. Telegram has also become a place for more of the hate groups, conspiracy theories. It has these groups. It's very anonymous. MeWe as well has become a space for that because it's like anonymous Facebook, I would say, but it has those groups. And Signal has deleting apps, like it's end-to-end encryption, and so it's very private. So those are some red flags. I mean, if your kid has a bunch of like anonymous end-to-end encrypted apps on your phone, that's kind of a red flag that something's going on. Maybe, I mean, maybe they just love online privacy, but probably not at that age. The last ones I mentioned are related to what I'm thinking about, like I mentioned at the very beginning of the presentation, about media literacy and what's real and what's true and all those kind of things. I'll mention again that we do free monthly webinars for educators, and the one I am doing at the end of the month on October 28th is why do we believe misinformation? And a lot of misinformation comes from 4chan or 8kun. A lot of those conspiracy theories are made by a bunch of trolls in deep, dark forums, and then they somehow drift from the pool of the swamp to the larger social media ecosystem, and then they're pulled into some daytime TV talk show or whatever it is. So there's a lot of hate speech and a lot of misinformation, particularly some forums on 4chan are not for kids at all. It's completely anonymous. No one really has accounts. It's very, very unmoderated. But what's even less moderated is 8kun, which is now hosted on the dark web because its hosting server kicked them off after it was attached to shootings. So those are red flags. There's just big red flag apps I would add on there. Some other ones that I'm watching right now are some of the amino apps because I'll write that down. They become pretty popular with tweens, that tween age group, and they're kind of a social media function, but around certain different topics, fandoms. There's a lot of fandoms there, and a lot of it's just fine. But of course, if you're going to get a bunch of fans together, sometimes that can be a bit toxic, and there can be harassment and things, especially since it seems to be skewing a little bit younger. That it can be sometimes problematic. But these are things I'm watching. But I want to ask you. So as we're gonna wrap up at 7:30, these last few minutes, I'd love to hear from you about any app that you're seeing, things that you have questions about. Just it could be an app, could be anything. I'd love to hear what you think. So these are some discussion questions, but whatever you want to share, whatever you want to ask, I will do my best to answer it. And I'll reiterate once again that I appreciate having you here. And I will give out I'll contact your PTA, Natasha, and I'll get a free book to one of the attendees here. But we'll just give a few more minutes. If you have any questions, I am here. And I'll also share some resources as well. But these are some questions to ask yourself. What's our own technology look what's our own technology use look like? I always tell this to parents to look inside yourself. What are you doing, and what behavior are you modeling, and what do you want to see, and are you doing what would create what you want to see as well? So questions, thoughts, chats. So Natasha says, what should you do if your child who is in your team is already created their own Facebook and Snapchat account? You have no idea about them. That happens more commonly than you'd think there. So it might be a bit of that peer influence there. But this is a time to have those conversations, especially at the younger ages. I would be, yeah, I would be concerned. I don't know what age you're referring to. So in their teens. So yeah, I mean, when they're 13 and up, they can kind of create that account on their own. But I would ask and go in like, what's the why? So start in with that curiosity. So even though you're like, I feel like they they didn't tell me or whatever, start with the why and start with the curiosity here, saying like, I really want to know what do you like about Snapchat and Facebook? What do you do on there? Can you tell me more about what you found? Hey, I have a Facebook account too, and this is what I found. So at that age, when they're older than 18, it's harder to, technically can be on it, but if they're using your own devices and they didn't, you have a contract or some kind of agreement that they didn't tell you, then that's another issue too. But I start with the why, start with the curiosity. When we reframe our brain, when we're a little bit upset about something, we sometimes come off like we don't mean to, like defensive or accusatory, but just be very open-ended and curious and start that conversation of what brought them there, and can we connect and can we talk about it? Maybe just particular friends were on it. Maybe it was a school project. Who knows? But let them tell you. So yeah, Mandy, what's the purpose of TikTok? So it's very like, remember, okay, so for us old people, remember Vine, all those short little videos? It's even shorter little videos like Reels a little bit or stories. But the algorithm, one thing that's very like compelling about TikTok is that when I talk to teens about it, it's always new. So you get the algorithm shares all sorts of different interesting videos and topics to you, and there's all very short. They're very, very easy to use. That's what I would say is one of the appeal as well. Like, years ago, if you were making a Vine video, you might need to have some kind of video editing skills, but the software in TikTok is so easy to use that very young people can have it. But when I talk to teens, it's kind of a lot of it's goofing off and having fun. But as TikTok has grown, and it's like the #1 downloaded app now. It grew a ton in 2020. It has become a place. There's a lot of conversations going on right now. There was testimonies at Congress right now about Facebook. More teens are on TikTok than Facebook. So I get the concern, but I also feel like it's misdirected. And I don't know why the CEO of TikTok wasn't testifying to Congress, honestly, because the more people that are on an app, the more potential for harm and cyberbullying. So when I was mentioning with TikTok earlier in the presentation, is a big thing on TikTok is trends. So you might have heard of like the cinnamon challenge. You eat cinnamon. You might have seen this in the news. There's been kind of a epidemic of teens just destroying or stealing things at their schools. The devious lick is what they were calling it, and that came from a TikTok trend. So talking about those trends, even though if your kid wants to roll their eyes at you, is important because some of them can be dangerous if you are consuming sugar, if you are doing something else. But this relates to a lot of that peer influence, is that they want to be like other people. The algorithm is such that like you can get a huge amount of followers and engagement by following these trends or doing the trends yourself. And that's something to have a conversation about. And some are just funny and harmless, but some are harmful too. So hope that answers a little bit of the question there, but happy to answer any more in the last bit of time we have here. And then please, you can keep in touch with us. I used to write on KSL. I do some other articles on all the tech trends, but we have some on our blog, and we try to offer some offer some support. So if you have any questions or things that you're seeing, I'm always talking to teens. You know, we talk to them, we survey them of what's going on, and we do our best to help get that information to parents and support you. So our main website is here, the responsability.net, and then of course there's the digitalparenting.com that has some additional resources. And if you have a gamer family, we have some game reviews and other support there. And I really appreciate you all having me out. So be in touch. I've been talking to your kids. All of our parents and student training is free. We're funded through the state of Utah. And Natasha, I'll be in touch to get a copy of the book out to one of your parent attendees. So please keep in touch. I appreciate the questions. I could do a whole session just answering questions. That's fun. So help us out if like we can help or I can answer questions. I'll do my best, and I appreciate you. So I actually have recorded this. I'm going to stop the recording. I will get that out to Creekview for maybe parents who weren't able to attend and wanted to review it. So I appreciate that. I'm going to stop.